All right, so welcome everybody to Are You Ready for the Eclipse? I am so excited about this topic and to talk with everyone this evening. So um, this is our agenda for tonight. We're gonna really focus on the eclipse. What is it? Some vocabulary around the eclipse, some words that you're gonna be hearing in newscasts and things coming up, and other phenomena to look for because looking at the eclipse itself is fantastic alone, but it only lasts a few minutes, and there's a lot of other things that the sky is going to be doing leading up to and just after the eclipse. So we're going to talk about those to really enhance your experience. Some viewing methods and general safety, very important, and some day of planning, logistics, where's the best place to be and to go. And then we'll wrap up with a handful of myths and legends from around the world because there are so many different ways that people have viewed the eclipse. All right. So why view an eclipse? Let's ask the critics. So these are some things that I have heard from folks that have seen a full solar eclipse before. Mesmerizing, experience of a lifetime, magical, out of this world, 10 out of 10, would see again. So our next full solar eclipse will hit in the skies April 8th, 2024, and I am so excited for it. Some other reasons to see an eclipse. The night sky and the sky in general has always been something that humans have looked for and looked at in awe and wonder. And this is just more of those amazing phenomena to be a part of. From time immemorial, people have been looking to the sky for meaning, and especially this time of the year in the winter. This is a great time to look at the night sky. You don't have to stay up as late, and traditionally, this is a time of year for storytelling. And to this day, people still sit outside and enjoy and share in the wonder of the night sky. So, with that, what is an eclipse? Let's dive in and talk about what is actually going on here. So, it's very simple, right? The moon passes just perfectly in front of the sun and covers up the sun, causing a shadow to cast across the earth. This is where I'm going to start throwing out some fancy words. They are here solely for your enjoyment and so that somebody wins the next time you're out at trivia night. So we've got the umbra and the penumbra. That is the most intense part of the moon's shadow on the earth. And the less intense is the penumbra. So for those of us who saw the partial solar eclipse of 2017, we were in that outer rim of the moon's shadow. So let's get into the different types of solar eclipses because as we know, they're not always that full solar eclipse. So there's three types of eclipses that can happen. We've got a partial eclipse. That means that alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth is not quite perfect. So the sun looks like a little wedge has been taken out of it. We've got that crescent shape, right? Up next, we've got the annular solar eclipse. And to simplify this one, the moon, as it circles around us, around the earth, it's not a perfect circular orbit. Sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's farther. And that's how we get super moons when we have a full moon and the moon is close in its orbit. Well, when the moon is close in its orbit, it can cover up the sun. When it's farther away, because of perspective, it appears smaller in the sky and it is no longer capable of fully covering the sun. And that's how you get this ring of fire eclipse. So what we're seeing here is the sun behind, the moon in front, and the moon only partially obstructing the view of the sun, these ones are not safe to look at with your own eyes because we are looking still directly at the sun's rays. And finally, we've got a total solar eclipse or a full eclipse. That is what we are looking for April 8th of next year. This is where the moon completely blocks out the sun and we are safe to look at it with our own eyes. So if we zoom back out again and we can see, this is how that eclipse happens. And this is actually a satellite image of that shadow of the moon as it's crossing around the Earth, right? Now, if you think about it, the sun is enormous. Now, I don't know if everybody knows just how enormous it is, but it is huge as compared to our tiny little moon. So I want to do a little experiment here for everybody at home. So this is why this tiny moon can cover up the sun, because it's 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's also 400 times closer to the Earth. And because of that perspective, this tiny, tiny object can cover up an enormous sun. So I want everyone to do this. I want you to take your thumb, and I just want you to look at the back of your thumbnail for a moment. It's a pretty small thing, right? Now, I want you to go ahead and look around your room for a second and find a relatively large object. So whether it's a clock on the wall or a photo, or maybe I've got a lamp here, and I want you to hold up your thumb at arm's length. So put your arm straight out in front of you with a straight elbow, like you're giving somebody a thumbs up. And I want you to place your thumb over that object in the room. Does your thumb cover that object, or can you still see it? So I'm going to look at my lamp over here. I'm going to put out my thumb and I can still see that entire lamp. Now I want you to bring your thumb closer to your eye. Close one eye and bring your thumb closer. Closer and closer until you can cover up that large object. Can everybody do it? So this explains how that tiny moon can cover up the sun. Now, for those of us who love numbers and like to be wowed by numbers, I did put them in here. So we've got the diameter of the sun, 865 miles across. The diameter of the moon is just 2,000. Then the distances apart, the moon to the Earth, 239,000 miles, and the moon to the sun, 92 million miles, just in order to blow everybody's mind. And if you wanted to make a scale diorama at home, what you could do is you could take the moon would be represented by a baseball or a tennis ball. The Earth would be represented by a basketball, and those two things would be about 23.5 feet apart from each other. Now, to add the sun into your diagram, you would need to create a 42-story sphere and put that about 1.75 miles away, and then you'd have a scale representation. Pretty wild, huh? All right, so we've got the hows and whys that solar eclipses happen. Now I want you to look at this photo, see where the Earth and moon are, and we're going to flip-flop those and put the Earth closer to the sun, covering up the moon, and that is how we get a lunar eclipse. The moon appears red when that happens because the shorter light wavelengths of light get scattered through our atmosphere, so the blues and the greens, they all get thrown out, and you're left with the longer red wavelengths, and that's what causes that blood moon. So we're not going to get into detail of this one, but just so you're all aware. All right, so here's where we get into some more terminology, because everybody loves learning some new big words, right? So someone throw it in the chat. What other words have you used or heard used to describe the eclipse or various things about the eclipse? So far we've learned about partial, annular, and total eclipses. we have learned the words umbra and penumbra. Does anyone have any other science-y eclipse words on the brain? We're going to learn a few more. All right, waiting for the chat here. We have a few more people joining us. All right, let's see. What other words are we about to learn? We're going to get into talking about the corona. That's that ring that that you see around the sun. The diamond ring effect, the totality or the path of totality, duration of the eclipse, and this is the one I want us all to focus on. It is the event truly of a lifetime. So all of these words, I'm just throwing them out there because we're going to hear them be bantered about in the next year, and you all are going to be smarter at the end of this and know what some of these things mean. So to dive into the rest of this terminology, totality is the moment when the sun is covered up and we are safe to look at it with our own eyes. And you can see for the 2024 eclipse here what the path of totality is going to be. It's going to cut down from Mexico and move northeast up through smack dab through Ohio and up into Canada. And the duration is how long totality lasts in a particular area. So let's get a closer zoomed in look here. So here is Ohio, and here is the path of totality across Ohio. And the duration times. So notice if you fall into any of these areas and how long this eclipse will last for you. And can anyone deduce why some of these places have a longer duration of total eclipse than others? I know not everything is on here. I wanted to throw in a couple of cities that are across Summit County. So we've got Twinsburg in the northern northeast corner of Summit County, Akron in the middle, and New Franklin is one of the southernmost communities. Nice, Alex got it. The longer the totality lasts, they are closer to the epicenter of the eclipse. Excellent word too, love it. So this blue line represents the smack dab center of the path of totality. Any place closest to this line, including city of Cleveland, is going to have a little bit of a longer totality. But rest assured, any of us in Summit County, no matter where you are, you will see a full solar eclipse. Now, the eclipse goes through 4 phases. All right, so first contact is the first one there on the left. And this is when the moon starts to touch the sun in the sky and just starts to overlap with it. Now, the times that I'm using here are accurate for Akron, and in a moment I'll show you how you can find out what time these things will occur in your own town. So at about 1:59 in the afternoon, that first contact is going to happen, followed by a smaller and smaller crescent of the partial eclipse. Second contact is right there with that last little bit of sunshine before the sun completely is eclipsed by the moon.
Yeah.
Followed by totality right here in the middle, and totality in the city of Akron is going to last just under 3 minutes. Third contact, when the sun begins to peek out again, that's when you got to stick those glasses right back on for safety of your eyes. And fourth contact is going to end at about 4:30 p.m. So we're looking at about 2.5 hours of something interesting to see in the sky. All right, so if you want to look up for your own town, this is the site that I have used most. It is timeanddate.com, and under their sun and moon tab and eclipses, that is where I found out all of these specific details of when things will be happening in my town. Okay, all right. Couple more. I think we got two more bits of eclipse terminology. The corona, which is gets its name from the word crown. It's the outermost layer of a star's atmosphere made up of hot ionized gases called plasma. And we can most easily see this during an eclipse. It's just like looking at a light bulb. If I look at the light bulb, my lamp over there, I can't get a great view of it because it's too bright to the eye. If I cover it up, I can see more of the details around it, right? And lastly, another little bit of terminology, you're going to hear about this diamond ring or diamond ring effect. And that's the last little bright light before the sun is totally eclipsed. And that's going to happen right before and just after totality. Okay. All right. So this is one of my favorite things. These are some other phenomena to watch out for on this day. So I myself plan to make a day of it, hang out in the backyard and watch all of these weird, kind of otherworldly things happening. First off are crescent-shaped shadows. All right, so as the sun is getting eclipsed and it's in that partial phase, you'll notice crescent-shaped shadows on the ground. So something that you can do is you can take a colander or a slotted spoon and hold it up and pull it farther and farther away from the ground, especially if you put something white down on the ground, and you will see just how eclipsed the sun is at that moment. So be sure to find a tree during the eclipse and stand under it for the natural shapes. And again, bring anything outside that you can project that little crescent onto the ground with. All right, some other things up next as those shadow bands are occurring, don't forget to look up because you're going to start seeing those last bits of light disappear behind the moon. These are named for an astronomer whose name is Francis Bailey, and Bailey's beads are these little bright dots of light. Why is that light not all in one spot? Because the moon is not perfectly round. It has all sorts of little craters and valleys, and that light finds those little crevices and shines through. And eventually you end up with just one bead left with this brilliant diamond ring before full totality. And that is when you can take your glasses off safely. At this moment, what we can see the corona around the sun. And you can look for flares and little bits of dancing. And I've heard this described as it looks like someone pulled the plug out of the sky or like a black hole opened up in the sky. So this is what it's all about. Now, while totality is happening, and again, a little bit before and after, look around you because it's going to be a false sunset. And 360 degrees across the horizon will appear like sunset. And lastly, look out for a lack of shadow. Again, in this couple minute period just before and during and after, the light, no light means no shadows or very diffuse light as the sun is being covered up. And people say it looks a little weird. Everything looks very flat and not three-dimensional anymore because there's not so much light shining through as we would on a nice, bright, sunny day. Oh, and then the last thing, look for street lights and parking lights turning on. I had a group of friends go down to Tennessee for the 2017 eclipse, and they thought, you know what, rather than being in the middle of town, let's drive to the northernmost part of town on the outskirts. They stopped at a supermarket, hung out in the parking lot, and figured they could get ahead of some of the traffic. Well, while they were watching The parking lot lights popped on because they are in sync with how much light there is outside. So just be mindful whatever spot you choose to not be under any sort of automatic lights that might put a damper on your experience. All right. And then something else that's really fun to do, make some predictions before, during, and after. What do you think is going to happen? So I'm going to let you sit on this question for a moment. What do you think you're going to feel, see, experience during totality? So I'll tell you a couple things. One is that clouds can dissipate and evaporate. Oh, pitch blackness. I love it. Let's see. Anybody else have things that you're going to look for? So the clouds dissipating, this is because there's this constant churn of solar radiation hitting the ground, causing evaporation, causing clouds. And um, when that fuel, that heat source from the sun, causing the air to rise, when that is cut off, convection clouds die out. So depending now, this time of the year for us, it's going to be relatively cool, so that may not happen, but clouds can dissipate and evaporate during totality. What else? Temperature changes. Again, we're dealing with October and April, so it's going to be possibly fairly cool. But we could experience some temperature changes. Again, more intense in hotter climates. And yeah, Linda says that crickets might start chirping because they think it's evening, and that's absolutely something that can happen. That was my next point, animal behaviors. If you want to become a part of a citizen science effort, visit eclipsesoundscapes.org. So this is a group of scientists that are trying to find out, how eclipses and how, the sun and moon affect the way that animals behave. And it's one thing for a scientist to go out and watch for 3 minutes, but if hundreds of us each go and record our observations, that data set becomes enormous. So think about contributing. And what else? There's all kinds of things. We already talked about some of those other phenomena. Um, just everyone being in the same place, experiencing the same awe, a hush falling over a crowd. Just, pure joy. Pretty neat. Virtue says you would get cold. Yeah. And that's absolutely something that can happen. We're going to get those temperature changes. Awesome. Oh, and there we go. Some birds and things doing things that they're not used to doing that time of the day. All right, eclipse by the numbers. These are just some fast, fun facts. 1806 was the last eclipse in the state of Ohio, and the next one after 2024 is in 2099. That's a long time. There are 31 million people who live in this band right here that you see in the path of totality. 13 different states plus Mexico and Canada will experience this eclipse. The path of totality is about 124 miles wide, and paths every year can, when there are eclipses, can be a little bit wider or a little bit narrower depending on how close the moon is to us. And then this number astounded me. 563 million years from now will be the last solar eclipse ever. And that one might only last for a single second before seeing the sun. Why? Because our moon, ever so slightly, is moving away from the Earth at the smallest increment, but we do know that it is moving away. So that far in the future, whether the Earth still looks like the planet it is now, will be potentially the last ever solar eclipse. And we are the only planet that can experience solar eclipses. There are other planets that have very large moons, but they are so far away from the sun that they can produce annular eclipses, but nobody else but us in our solar system gets this totality. Pretty neat. And here's some other upcoming eclipses in North America over the next, 70 years or so. So you see again in Ohio, we've got September 14th, 2099. If you want to go out to the Southwest and Florida, you can do that in 2045. And there's a skinny little eclipse happening down in Mexico, 2071. So there are other opportunities, but very rarely, do you get to be in the path. All right, so up next, some safety things. And again, throw questions in here. I'm just going to keep on going. But how to safely view an eclipse. Now, this is one of the most important bits of information. There's a couple of resources. This first one here is the American Academy of Ophthalmology. They've got some good information about eyeglass safety. First of all, sunglasses, not safe if you're going to look upward and stare directly at the eclipse. I don't care how nice your sunglasses are, those will not protect your eyes from potential short or long-term damage. So if we're going to wear glasses, I've got mine here. I know they seem very ineffectual, these little cardboard and mylar glasses, but this is going to protect your eyes. Other things that are not safe, looking directly through your phone at the eclipse, through your camera or binoculars especially, or heaven forbid, a telescope, you are brightening that light and focusing it straight into your eye. So just because there's a piece of glass in between does not make you safe. But you can cover those things with specially designed sun filters that can make those things safe for viewing. So you could look through your binoculars or telescope. The other thing too that is not on this list is welder's goggles, or a welder's helmet is something that some folks may have at home already. If you do those sorts of things, and you can look at the eclipse through welder's glasses. Now, where to find and purchase these things? The QR code on the right, if you want to snap that, that's going to take you to the American Astronomical Society. And they've got an entire list of various eclipse viewers and reputable sellers of these things. You see here that I crossed off Amazon. I know you can get eclipse glasses there, and it's very tempting to want to buy them easy on Amazon, but there are far too many copies and replicas out there that are not safe. Okay, Linda asks a perfect question. I was hoping someone would ask this. I have a pair of glasses, she says, from the last partial eclipse. Are they still safe to use? Possibly. So it all depends on how you stored them. This material itself is absolutely fine from eclipse to eclipse if they were stored properly. So improperly would be these glasses sitting out, say, on a desk where they're in direct sunlight day in and day out. That can degrade them over time. Or if you, say, close them up and put them in your backpack and they've been tumbling around there or at the bottom of a desk drawer, because if these lenses get scratched, they can allow rays to hit your eyes. So as long as you kept good care of them, mine have been in an envelope in a box. So I know that they've been away from the sun and they have been protected and are in great shape. If that's the case, woohoo, you get to use them again. But if you don't trust the ones you have now, I would definitely get yourself another pair just in case. The hands down best deal that I have found is our own Maple Leaf gift store at Nature Realm. Plus you get to support the parks, so that's cool too. Online, I've seen them run for $4 or $5 a pair, but we're selling them at $2, pretty much just to cover the costs, because we want people to be able to use these. And there is a limit of 10 per purchase. So you can get those at Nature Realm. We are not offering shipping right now, but you can call ahead and purchase them and come pick them up when you are available. But if you do go out and purchase your own, you want to look for the ISO, that's the International Safety Standardization. It's 12312-2. That number should be printed on your glasses. And let's see here. Yep, mine is printed on the inside, ISO right there. So that is the safety standard you want to look for. And you can also test your glasses by putting them on, and it should be like you're looking at black construction paper. You shouldn't be able to see anything unless you look directly at the sun. I'm looking at my lamp. I'm looking at my overhead light. I cannot see those, but if you look at a very bright LED light, sometimes you can get a bit of a glow, and that's okay. So that's testing out your glasses. And if you are buying a large quantity, say you're a teacher and you want to get, a box of several hundred for your school, ask to buy a single pair or a sample first, so that you know the entire batch is going to be good. All right. And then some other little DIY things you can do. You can make an Eclipse viewer with a cereal box. We'll be putting up some description on how to do this on our website fairly soon. But really any cardboard box or cereal box, if you cut out about a 2x2 square at both corners of the top of the box. So if you see, this gal here in the middle, she cut out a little square on the one side. On the other side, you cut an equally sized square out of the top of the box and cover that with either aluminum foil or a piece of paper or cardstock, and just put a single pin prick, and do not widen it. So we're not hole punching, a single prick of a pin. And remember that video earlier where he showed how that projection will form? So inside your box, put some plain white paper, look through the bigger hole, and with your back to the sun, you'll be able to see, because you've created this little dark space, you'll be able to see the partial eclipse projected in the box. Two other ways you can do this. You can just pick up a single piece of paper and put a hole in it and play with that, see how close or how far you can go away from the ground to get a good projection. Or with a big box, and this is great for kids, this is a little bit easier. Take a nice big box, put a tiny pinhole on one side, and we're not going to make the pinhole through the box itself because cardboard's just too thick. That's why we want to cut out a little hole, replace that with aluminum foil or cardstock, make a tiny pin, and then inside of the box you'll see the projection of the sun. And of course you can go out there with your colander too. And now my biggest piece of viewing advice is to stay home. These are pictures from the 2017 eclipse. Stay home, or stay close to home. It turns out that for our last solar eclipse, travel times took on average 2 times what they normally would following the eclipse, in some places even longer. Populations in the state of Wyoming, the entire state's population more than doubled in one day, and all of those people were on one single line. So of course we've got some, better traffic control and things being a more populated space, but if you can see the sky, you can see the eclipse. So stay, near home, someplace maybe you can walk to is ideal, because we're going to be the place to be. People are going to be coming to Ohio and to these other states from all around the country and even other countries. So we are encouraging people to try and help ease the burden on the roads. Oh, okay. So I see. Are the parks going to have a viewing party? Unfortunately, Summit Metro Parks is not hosting a viewing party. Reason being, we only have two parks that are very equipped for large groups. That would be Monroe Falls and Silver Creek. And even still, we only have several hundred parking spaces. And after watching the 2017 eclipse in neighboring states, we determined that our park areas are just not big enough to encourage having one large party, but all of our parks will be open. So we encourage people, maybe find a park that's a little more off the beaten path, or a separate parking lot where you can find some space. But if you really do want to travel, here are some of the large venues. And you notice the size of them, right? They're just bigger than our friendly neighborhood metro parks. So we've got some local fairgrounds, Brown Stadium. We'll be hosting really big events if you want that big festivity kind of feel. And the state of Ohio's official statement is come early and stay late if you are coming to the Buckeye State. Plan on arriving. If you have family coming to visit you, have them come and travel a day or two early and stay a day or so after to help alleviate that traffic. Many of our schools in the area are already planning to have a day off or a partial day for students. Being that this is happening at 3 p.m., I think that's a great idea, so that the school buses, poor school buses, don't have to get stuck in traffic. If you have an opportunity to work from home or change your schedule, talk to your own employers, because ultimately we're helping things like emergency services. People that really, really need to be on the road. We want to make sure that, we as the citizens of Northeast Ohio do our best to welcome other folks here and encourage as many people to enjoy this phenomenon as possible. All right. And so this is where we end. I've got a handful of some art myths and culture and legends from the past and how people have seen the eclipse. And then I'm going to wrap up with some of our upcoming star and night sky related programs, and I'll stay on for a while to answer questions too. Oh, Kathy asks a great question as well. Our typical cloud cover will keep us from seeing eclipses? Unfortunately, yes. Right now, based on historical weather data, the state of Ohio during the month of April, we have a 40% chance of the sky being perfectly clear of clouds. That's a little scary. Now, further southwest where the eclipse is, I think the state of Nevada, if I'm not mistaken, some of the highest chance is about 70% in the month of April. So, yes, we could come to this day and it could be a gray day, and we will not see, just like today on a gray, cloudy sky day. Actually, I did see the sun yesterday. Sometimes you look up and the sun's there behind the clouds, but we will not see the full phenomenon if it is cloudy. And if you really want to see this eclipse and you want to go down south, make your plans now, and be sure to travel in and out a day or two ahead or below. Columbus or Dayton, better chance? Possibly. But most of Ohio is going to have about the same chance of having cloudy or sunny sky conditions. Really, you're going to have to think about going much, much further south to get enough of a difference. And of course, you can watch the weather leading up to and decide to take a road trip. But just know that accommodations and things are booking up fast. So Yeah, so make those plans. Maybe have a second location in the back of your mind. All right, so let's dive into a little bit of eclipse myth and legend before we wrap up. So, what's in a name? The word eclipse that we have in English comes from the Greek word eclipsis, which meant omission or abandonment, that the sun was abandoning people. The Aztecs, their word meant that the sun, it faltered or became restless or troubled. The ancient Chinese accounts contain the characters for ugly or abnormal. And even one of the modern ways to refer in Chinese um, to the eclipse literally translates to sun eat. And as you'll see, many ancient people thought that something was taking a bite out of the sun. Um, so this is from the Pueblo people of the Southwest. This is one of our earliest depictions in North America of an eclipse, and this round circle here shows Venus. Oh, something I neglected to mention. When the eclipse is in totality, the stars will come out. And in this case, when this eclipse happened over 1,000 years ago, the planet Venus was visible. This is a depiction from a Maya book dating to around the 11th century. And they believed that this giant serpent here would come and try to devour the sun, depicted by this white um, object here on the left and the black object, the moon, on the right. And the Inca, um, they believed that a giant jaguar was coming to devour or take a bite out of the sun. And in places that are now Paraguay and Argentina, that whole section, a lot of South America, they would come out and bang pots and pans and blow trumpets and horns, encourage dogs to howl and bark in order to frighten away this jaguar so that the sun would return. In Vietnam and other places around there, they believed a giant toad or frog was responsible for swallowing up the sun. In ancient China, it was a dragon. And in other ancient Chinese stories, a dog. And the god of childbirth and of children would shoot an arrow up into the sky in order to stop this dog from devouring the sun. And other arrow shooting peoples were the Ojibwe. They would light arrows on fire and fire them up toward the sun to reignite it and to bring the flame back to the sun again. I have two more that are just, these ones are pretty fun. So in Norse mythology, Odin gave magical chariots to Sol, the sun goddess, and Mani, the moon god. And he asked them to drag the sun and the moon across the sky to bring night and day to the people. Well, little did he know that these two would become sidetracked and they were looking down at the landscape and enjoying the beauty of the earth, and sometimes, eavesdropping on the people and seeing what they were up to. So no one ever knew when the sun was going to come up or go down, and people never knew what time of the day to wake up. So Odin is angered by this. He's trying to figure out a way to coax them along. Nothing works, and eventually Loki comes up with an idea, and he sends these two giant celestial wolves after them. And so to this day, it's understood that the sun and the moon are being pulled by chariots, constantly chased by these wolves, and sometimes the wolves catch up and are able to take a bite before the chariot can break free. And it's thought that when the wolves finally do catch up and devour the sun and the moon, that is when Ragnarok, the end of days, will occur. Oh, okay, we've got a good question here that popped in. It said, did eclipses happen more often in the past? No, on average, there's an eclipse somewhere in the world, anywhere from once a year to every other year, whether it be a full eclipse or a partial eclipse. So that, our sun and moon are constantly kind of passing over each other, but with such a little band of totality, they, rarely strike the exact same place twice. So yeah, about the same amount of time, although many, 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 many years ago, they may have lasted totality a bit longer when the moon was closer. And now that it's moving away, as we learned, eclipses on the whole will become a little bit shorter, but nothing that we'll be able to measure during our lifetimes. All right, and this last story comes to us from ancient India, from Hindu mythology. And there was a demon named Rahu, and Rahu disguised himself as a god and tried to drink an immortality elixir that was meant only for the gods. And the sun and the moon, they saw this happen and immediately reported it to Lord Vishnu. So Vishnu comes to Rahu and immediately beheads him to stop that elixir passing down into his body, turning him into a god. So they believed that his head, being that it did touch the elixir, was maintained as an ethereal, godly being, while the rest of his body was lost and ultimately decayed as a human body would. So Rahu is now depicted as either a head or a head with arms that has been thrust up into the cosmos and is constantly chasing the sun for revenge for turning him in. Now, he can on occasion grasp hold of the sun and swallow it, but because the rest of his digestion no longer exists, it simply passes very quickly and the sun comes back to us. And this very last story, this one involves not a solar but a lunar eclipse, that blood moon occurrence. And this is an example of how knowledge is power, and knowledge as power can be used for good or for evil. So this gentleman depicted here is Christopher Columbus. And in early 1504, him and his crew became wrecked on the island of Jamaica. And the local people there were very kind, and they offered them food and provisions for months upon months. Now, Columbus knew that eventually they would be rescued, but they would have to wait out some time. Well, throughout this time, his crew mutinied. They set upon the locals. There was a huge rebellion, and he feared for his life. And this is where he used his knowledge for evil. This is where he went into his cabin on the ship and found an almanac and noticed that an eclipse was coming. So he went to the local chiefs and said, my God is very angry that you have not provided us with provisions. In 2 days' time, he will bring about terrible atrocities on your people if you do not provide for us. And the first sign will be that he will inflame the moon with wrath and turn it red. Of course, no one believes him. 2 days later, the moon does indeed begin to turn red, as he predicted. So immediately the people repent, they bring them food, and the sun, or I'm sorry, the moon returns to normal and loses that red color. Um, so yeah, he not the greatest guy, but he did use his knowledge in order to save him and his crew, and before they were able to be rescued. So crazy things. Thankfully, nowadays we all have access to ways of telling when these events are occurring, and no one can anymore pull the wool over our eyes and tell us these strange stories of solar happenings. So, why do the moon and the night sky matter? Beyond being just fabulous phenomena to look at, you've got things like fireflies that rely on dark skies in order to see each other. You've got creatures like sea turtles who are so in tune with the moon and look for the glitter of the moon on water to know where to go. But nowadays, there's glitter coming from other directions, like these street lamps here, and little baby turtles end up where they're not supposed to be. But you can help if anyone ever does visit areas where sea turtles are nesting. You can actually go out with local park or biologist professionals and scoop up baby turtles and get them where they need to go. So consider volunteering. What a great thing to be a part of a vacation. And around here, our local birds rely on the moon and the stars to navigate during their migrations. You can become a part of Lights Out Cleveland and Akron, who assist birds in their migration and encouraging people to turn off lights and help encourage there to be a darker night sky. And finally, the moon and the night sky give us something to wonder in awe at, and really just make us feel connected to our earth and um, to our own selves and each other. So here are some upcoming astronomy programs if you enjoyed yourself tonight. I will be giving just about this same presentation again in February. So if there's others in your life who may benefit or like to hear this information, I'll be presenting again. In the month of March, we'll be having open houses where you can try on Eclipse glasses and learn hands-on and make Eclipse viewers. Those will be in the month of March and April at all three of our nature centers. Star Talk and Star Stories are constellation-based programs, and the Circumpolar Express in January there, that's a program all about navigating via the night sky and the stars, how people used to do it and how you can learn how to do that. So with that, I want to say thank you all so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you took away some tidbits and learned some things. I'll be here for another couple of minutes if anyone wants to pop anything in the chat or unmute and ask some questions. But already, thank you all for your kind comments, and I am so glad that everyone joined tonight.